Well, let's get started. I want to talk about JavaScript in emails because I mean, let's get into it. Every web application sends emails. Every single one of them. Everyone I've ever put into production, it sends emails. Now that might just be user registration emails or forgotten password things. But there's most applications do things that are a bit more interesting than that. That try and engage users and try and get them back in and give them information, give them stuff that your application is doing. But I don't think I know anybody who actually likes working on those emails, and that's always a worry. In fact, if you if you talk to me about HTML emails, this is kind of the face you're going to get. I'm just suspicious of anybody that enjoys HTML emails because they're a horrible, horrible thing to develop and work with. In fact, this is my thoughts on this. HTML email is basically a combination of modern web design and the tools with which we built GeoCities and MySpace pages. Horrible, horrible times for everybody involved when you're developing it. Although I have to say, I am just hugely impressed when I think about this, that HTML email is such a ridiculous thing to develop with. When you actually receive an HTML email, there's so many creative and well laid out and beautiful emails that I'm quite impressed by the people that do manage that. But, things can be better. They can definitely be better than this. This is what, I always think of when I think of web design, web development in 2003 and HTML email now. It all looks the same. And not only that, there's the rendering engines. So not only do you have to deal, of course, with the fact that HTML email is so set in the past, there's actually more rendering engines available than there are browsers today, right? These days, if you're building a web application, you've kind of got to worry about 3 different rendering engines. You got Chrome, you got Safari, you got Firefox, and Edge is Chrome these days, and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of low and easy. But in email, there's rendering engines. Not only even the ones in web browsers are different across the board. And then there's Outlook 2019. Outlook forever has used Word. It's used the HTML rendering engine of Word, which just blows me away. It's got several browsers available to it on Windows, and it still picks Word as the rendering engine. Word. So HTML email is a horrible place to be, but can things be better? This is kind of how I feel like with HTML. I feel like Clippy is just getting involved. But let's move on. Can it be better? Because I've seen some pretty good email experiences myself recently, and this got me interested in the whole subject. There's things, new experiences in email, and I feel like we all spend a lot of time inside our own. We probably spend a lot of time inside our email clients. So when you see a new experience, that can actually kind of be a really good day. So let me just have a quick. I wanted to show you a couple of them. I've got a couple of emails here. The first of them is if you have Gmail and you get a Google Calendar invite of some sorts. This is the email, a bit underneath, right? This says you've been invited to this event. But this has been added on by Gmail itself, which is really nice. And so you can actually accept this invitation right here. In fact, I probably should. It's speaking at DevFest. Yeah, I'm here right now. It's cool. This is really cool though, and I think this is just a function of the fact that Gmail knows that this is a Google Calendar invite and can kind of add this in, and it's really nice. I much prefer that than having to click on yes and or no in this bit here and open up another tab, which loads my calendar and takes forever. But this is just added on. This is a Gmail thing, right? What about this one though? Have you commented on a Google Doc recently and then had a response come back to you? You might see something like this. And actually, I've got this document in the background here. So this is the email on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is the document. And there's a comment thread here, as you can see. It's been opened up. But inside the email here, we can see this comment thread, and we have an input box to fill in with our comment, right? Hello. In fact, I'm just going to comment hello from DevFest. And if I do that, and if I hit reply, this all happens within the email. And not only does it send it there and reload it in the email, we can see on the right-hand side that comment arrived inside the document as well. And so this is this new experience in email that I'm kind of excited about in a way, because this is clearly somebody running some JavaScript inside an email. So yeah, and there's other bits you can do. You can follow this discussion. We can resolve the whole comment thread as well, and that goes away on there. It's amazing. It's amazing in my experience, in my opinion. I think those are the experiences I want to see. And today I wanted to deal with you, show with you how this is done, and decide together, hopefully, if this actually is a good idea, and if we should be developing more of these things. So how is this done? I do want to say, by the way, we have this chat box on the right-hand side of the talk, and I do want to say, if you are, thanks for the people saying hello. If you do have anything you want to say during the talk, I'm going to be watching that. So do kind of give me a wave in there if you want to, and then pop any questions in that Q&A tab, and we'll get to them at the end. So how is this done? Well, I'm going to take a little detour via the world of AMP. Now, AMP is Google's accelerated mobile pages, right? It's a program that came up about 4 years ago. Which was intended to help development agencies create faster web pages, I guess. You've probably seen it in an experience like this, where you're on a search results page, and there's a possibly for normally for a news item, things like that, and you get this carousel of things that go across the top here, and then when you click on them, it's kind of an instant load. And then weirdly enough, it's also lives inside its own carousel again. And even though you've clicked on, in this case, this is Sydney Morning Herald or The Guardian or The Age, which are all available in Australia, you're still on google.com.au up the top, or whichever your local Google URL is. So AMP is a combination, in a way, of two things, really. There's this it's a web framework, which is great. It's an open source web framework. It's based on web components, and it's designed for performance. But it's also it also requires the people developing AMP websites to then host them on Google servers in the Google cache, and that's why they appear on a Google URL. And that's the bit I don't like about it. I feel like that breaks the web in a way for myself, and I believe that we can build fast websites without having to host them inside Google's infrastructure so that they can preload things. But that's a side point to all of this. The important thing here is that AMP itself is just this web framework, and this bit, when it's designed for performance, is kind of interesting because it is all about making sure that the page doesn't change its layout too much. It does things like insisting that images have sizes set on them, and you can't have an image in an AMP website that doesn't have a size set, so that the image doesn't kind of load and move the page around. It's all sorts of things like that for AMP. But then last year, AMP email came out, and this is where we're getting to with this interactive kind of dynamic email. AMP email is this subset of AMP elements and their functionality. So it's kind of a subset of a subset, in a way, that can be used to create dynamic interactive emails. And it's really it's neat because AMP email is made up of 18 web components that you can use inside an email. And we'll see some of those in just a minute, but it allows us then to create these dynamic interactive things. And even though there is not, there's only 18 of them, there's a lot of power in those elements that you can use. And I'm going to show you how to build with some of that in just a minute. But one extra little part of AMP email, which is glorious for those who have ever built an HTML email and want it to go away, is that you can use proper CSS as well, and modern CSS, which is the most important part. So you can put the CSS in a style element in the head rather than littered as inline tags throughout the entire document. And you can use modern CSS, including background images. That's not exactly modern, but it's just not something available to most HTML email. But then also layout things like Flexbox and Grid. the pseudo classes, because you can't do that if you're doing an inline style, and media queries. Again, can't do that in an inline style, but you can do it inside of CSS inside an AMP email. So we can start to build emails with AMP email. You can build an email that's almost the same experience as building a website, which is nice. It's certainly better than what we had before. So this sounds magic, or at least it sounded magic when I heard it explained the first time. What's wrong with this? What's the difficulty? Where are we? Well, firstly, it is only available in certain email clients. And those clients are Gmail, Outlook.com. That is Outlook in a browser, not on the desktop. Mail.ru and Yahoo Mail. And in fact, AOL Mail. I think they're basically the same. It's only available on those. They are the mailboxes that support this right now, which is fine because it is a progressive enhancement. You see, when you're normally sending emails as a developer, you can send two different parts. You can send a plain part and an HTML part. And if the mailbox only supports plain text, then it will look at that plain text. If it does support the HTML part, it will render the HTML part. And when you want to send an AMP email, you can send a text XAMP HTML part as well. And so it really relies on this existing MIME type thing that emails already had going for them, which I think is really nice. It does, of course, mean you have to build a third email, and you don't get away from building your old HTML email, but maybe we can deal with that. And it's not all bad either, because the email client market share, and this is stats from Litmus Labs, currently based on emails opened in September this year. And sure, the Apple iPhone mail client is at the top there, but Gmail has 26% of all email opens. And then Yahoo Mail's in there at 5%, Outlook.com at 1%. So you can hit about a third of users with this technology. And of course, if you have statistics from your own email sending and analytics like this, you might be able to tell whether your users have these, you can tell what clients your users are opening your emails in, and that might be different. And if you are sending to many Russian users, for example, mail.ru is likely to come a lot higher in that list. I want to talk quickly about testing and sending AMP email, and then hopefully we'll get on to building and looking at an AMP email itself. So in terms of testing, AMP themselves provide a playground for you to test in, which is nice. Let's have a quick look at them. Bring the screen down. So yeah, there's an AMP playground, which gives you a live kind of building thing here and a validator. So this little green button up here is telling me if my AMP HTML is valid. And then it renders it here, and you can render it inside of an iPhone if you want to, size. There's also the Gmail AMP email playground. This one is provided by Gmail. It's under amp.gmail.dev. And it's almost the same kind of thing. It has the validator in it. And actually at the bottom here, there's a send button, which you can use to send that email to yourself, which is really useful for testing, of course. And then finally, there is just the AMP validator, which is almost the same as that Gmail playground. Can't send anything from it, but the validator, or validating these emails, is super important because if you don't validate them, then they don't appear inside that inbox correctly. If you have a Gmail account, you want to test sending them to yourself, you have to go into settings and hit on the developer settings for dynamic email. If you have always allowed dynamic emails from amp@gmail.dev, that's the AMP playground sending it to yourself. But you can also say always allow dynamic emails from your sender, and then you can test with it. So my sender is phil@nash.rocks. And that's what I use for sending and testing AMP emails to myself. And then when it comes to sending them, you can use your own email server if you have one. And if it supports sending that extra text XHTML, XAMP HTML part. But you can also send from an email service that supports AMP email. As I work for Twilio, it would be a bad thing if I didn't mention that Twilio SendGrid does support this. And that's what I'm using to send my AMP emails myself. Finally, when it comes to sending AMP email in production, you actually do need to get whitelisted by each mailbox provider. This used to be a painful process where you had to fill out a form for each of them. But now there is one single form which you can fill out and it will get sent to all of them. So when it comes to sending in production, you do have to get whitelisted. You have to make sure we're not abusing this system. And when you do so, you're free to send. So let's build an AMP email. It's too much talk about it. I want to get involved and show you a bit of code. So I have, okay, let's come out of that. I have a little application. It actually looks a bit like this. I've built this polling application. You can ask a question and it sends a poll out. In fact, let me just send myself, send myself an email with this poll in it. And that should arrive in my inbox over here. Over here. There we go. And this is an AMP email. You can tell that with the little lightning bolt in the top here, over at the top right. But right now, it's not doing anything AMP-like at all. What we can do is we can see the original HTML message, which looks very much the same, although I've got some fonts in there. And you can actually, I like this, you can see the original, and I ended up using this a lot whilst debugging. You can see the whole original email where you can see I've got a plain text part, I've got the HTML part, and then right down the bottom is the AMP part. And this, one thing just to note is that you have to pass SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. And if I'm not going to go into that today because I don't really have the time, but getting passes on these is not trivial because it's DNS based and a pain. But if you're sending lots of emails, you probably have these things set up for your email already. So let's make this email a bit more AMP-like. Let's bring up the application. So this is where I'm sending it. This is just a JavaScript application I'm using, sending the emails from Node.js. And like I said, sending it using SendGrid. And to send it, it's kind of as easy as just this sendgrid.send to from subject. And the content is this array of different types: text plain, text HTML, and text XAMP HTML. And you can just see here, I'm using Nunjux, which is just a templating system in Node to render various things. To render this. This is my AMP HTML email. So it looks a lot like regular HTML, but you'll see some differences. Starting with, at the top here, we've got a lightning bolt AMP for email, which just tells everything that it's AMP for email. You don't have to use the emoji if you don't want to. You can just do AMP for email, but I don't know. I think that looks exciting. I like that. Then inside the head, you can see we've got a JavaScript here. That would instantly be a problem if you had in regular HTML email, but we can add this asynchronous AMP project. This is the base script for AMP. We then get a style in the head. Again, like I said, styles in the head is something we're just not allowed to do inside of a regular HTML email. But this AMP for email boilerplate, this one has to be here. And this just keeps the body hidden until everything loads. This is kind of one of those things that AMP websites do as well. And I think we got pulled along with it. Now, this email still does have tables as I'm matching kind of the HTML version of it, which is there. We don't need to see that right now. And it's just interpolating a couple of things from the database into it. There we go. So what am I going to do? First up, I want to add something that you definitely don't see in emails at the moment. It's going to be a nice, easy start. I'm going to add a carousel, add a couple of images. And so to do that, first up, I'm going to use the AMP carousel element for this. And to do that, I need to include a script tag here for the custom element, AMP carousel. Adding that script tag is fairly straightforward. That just gives me access to the AMP carousel inside the thing. Then I'm going to add it in here. So AMP carousel, like I said, this is all web component based stuff. So it looks like this. We got an AMP carousel element, and we can add attributes to it. So like I said, one of the things about rendering in AMP is that you have to ensure that you're not resizing the page a lot. And so giving a width and a height to elements is super important. And so this is the width and height that I need for this. However, you can set the layout to be responsive. And that means it will just kind of maintain that aspect ratio if things get smaller, which is kind of nice. And then I can also set the type here to slides. and that is going to make nice slides with whatever I put inside the carousel. And so let's put a couple of bits inside the carousel. We use AMP image. AMP image does a couple of things. It does lazy loading sections as well as enforcing that width and height thing again. So I'm just going to pop a width 640 and a height. Like I said, all these images are just going to be this size, 471. We need that, and then we need the source, and that source is going to get generated from my database when I send the email, and it's just going to be poll.answer a image. Cool. That's my AMP image. Yeah. Oh, I didn't finish the tag. Yeah, that's right. We'll need to do that. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that because the second image is just going to be the answer B image. There we go. Like that. There we go. That's better. Weird formatting there from Prettier, I think. That has added a carousel. So if I go back to my poll, and I can't refresh this email, that's different to normal web development there. I can send myself a new email, and that will hopefully show up here in my inbox. There we go, and bring with it that carousel of images. And there we go. So this the question I'm asking, by the way, which do you prefer, pie or cake? This is something that the developer evangelism team at Twilio argues about constantly. And so when I was building an application to show as part of this talk, I was like, obviously we have to be doing, asking this question. And so there's a vote for pie in the chat already, Avram. Yeah, that's a good looking pie, but that's a good looking cake, right? And this is my AMP carousel. This is a carousel inside of an email, which I think, pretty cool start. What's nice about this is it can also change your mind on the cake. Well, this is my problem with the whole debate, is that I would eat both of those happily, one after another, or even at the same time with 2 bowls and 2 spoons in front of me. I'd just go for it. This carousel is pretty cool because you can actually hook into events in it. And so when you change the current image, you can kind of set what the current index is and use that to change state on the rest of the email and show different content in the rest of the email. I'm not going to do that as part of this one, but I'm just telling you that this carousel is not just a pretty way of flipping back and forth between images, but can actually change more parts of the email as well. We're going for the pie chart. I went for a bar chart, I guess. Mainly because I wanted to I'm going to put this bar chart in the email as well. And I definitely didn't feel confident about making a conical gradient inside of an email. We're going to see this bar chart in just a second. So right now we've got this, we've got the carousel, which is real nice. But what we really want to do is be able to vote on this poll right here inside of the email. And so that's what I'm going to do next. Let's bring back the code. So this was the question. We're going to put ourselves a form in here. But what we're going to do is we're going to add an AMP form. So whilst that actually uses the existing form tag, we do need to add another script to the page. I'm going to copy these scripts because I can't remember the URLs off the top of my head. And I'm going to add 2 scripts. I've got the AMP form element here, which actually just hooks into our existing form. And then we also have AMP mustache. And so AMP mustache allows us to do templating inside of our emails. And so in this particular case, when we submit the form, the server is going to respond with some JSON, and we can use that JSON in the template to read out the results into it. So we'll see that in just a second. So let's go back to our form. Here it is. It's very much like a regular form. So you can add, say, the method. Method's going to be post. But what else are we going to get? We don't have an action like a normal form. We have an action XHR. And action XHR just means that this AMP form is going to make an XML HTTP request, an AJAX request, basically. I'm going to make it off to my server, which is actually running on my laptop. I'm using ngrok here to make it available outside of my laptop. I need to, yeah, just interpolate the current poll ID in there, and then it's the votes endpoint. And I'm just gonna, if I just save that, that refreshes, there we go. And I'm just gonna give this an ID as well. So this is gonna be answer A form. And that's gonna be important in a minute as well, because the fact that we have to deal with most of this declaratively, we're not really using a whole bunch of JavaScript here. We just have to deal inside the capabilities of this form. And so I'm just going to add, but I tell you what, I don't have a lot of time here. So I have a bit of, we're going to write some inputs here, some hidden inputs and a button. So these are regular things that you will see inside any other form. We've just got a hidden input here, which is the answer, another hidden input, which is including the email that I'd sent it to, and an input type submit, which is going to submit that button. So this is actually only submitting the answer for one of the answers. In fact, answer A, pi, in our example poll. So we are actually going to add a second form, which does answer B as well, and we'll see how that works in just a minute. But what we don't have right now is a way to deal with the answer coming back. And that we do with more declarative stuff. So inside of this form, we can set up a div with the attribute submit success. And this div will be rendered if the form submits successfully. And you can put content in there, but because I'm going to add two forms, we can actually just refer to a template, which will be this can be the poll charts template. Let's call it that. Yep. And so that div will render when the form is submitted successfully, and it will render a template that we'll write in just a minute. And then if there is a submit error, we can also write some stuff out. So we'll not a template. We can render another template here. And we call the template type of amp mustache, although in this particular case, I'm not going to render anything in here and just be like something went wrong. And nothing's going to go wrong, so we don't have to worry about that, sure. I am going to grab the same stuff. Let's just grab this whole form again. Actually, there should be an end div there. Is that right? I started a div. I did not start a div. I need a div class votes. That's better. Always right, template. Yeah, it's one of the most difficult things to get correct, I think, spelling these things right. Let's grab this whole form, and I'm going to put the next one in there. And this is answer B. So if I just take all of the things that say A and change them to B, we're pretty much done with that. And so I'm going to finish up by writing that template for if we have a success. I'm going to put it right at the bottom here. Let's write it correctly for this time. There we go. I got a autocomplete on it that time. And for this, I'm going to add the type again. This is an amp mustache, and we're actually going to see the templating here. And the ID was poll chart. There we are. Cool. So inside this, we're going to actually see the results of the poll. Latest results. And let's just scroll that up a little bit. We'll start by interpolating some things. So you've actually seen me do some interpolation inside of this already, like with these brackets. That's for nunchucks. So that's being rendered on my server when I send the email. These mustaches are being rendered inside the email using the responses coming back from the form submission. And the form submission comes back with the information about what the answers were. So answer A, and that's the answer. So this will be pi in this case. And then we'll have answer A votes. And that is going to be the number of votes that it has. And then we'll do the same for answer B, for answer, and answer B, the number of votes. And that's going to show me how many votes there are. And then, like I said, I want to add the bar chart into this as well. And then that's a bit more just HTML there. As you see, we've got answer A height and answer B height, which is going to help me out there as well. And there'll be some labels at the bottom of the chart. So that is that. There's a couple of things we need to do. Firstly, this chart is not going to look great. And so I am going to grab some style, some CSS that I can add to the head of this email. Let's go pop that in. Underneath the AMP for email boilerplate, I can add this style tag with an AMP custom attribute. And that allows me to do all the styling I want to in here. And check this out. We've got display flex. And that's pretty much the most exciting thing I can think of, using using proper layout in CSS inside of an HTML email. So display flex is going to help us there. And then there's the one other thing. I'm going to show you this right now, and then we'll get back to that final bit. So let's send the poll to myself. Because it shows me the last final interactive bit. So here's our latest poll. Ooh, not that bit. Here's our latest poll. So we've got our carousel still working. We've got our buttons, which you prefer pie or cake. We had, I'm going for change mind to cake. I'm going to vote for cake there. And that sends it in. And cool, we got our bar chart rendered, which is cool. We've got our latest results. Pie is 15 and cake's 24. This is just me voting against myself at this point. Cake is winning. But what you can see actually here is that we're still rendering these buttons, and I actually want these buttons to go away. Once you've voted, it's done, right? And so for that, let's head to the form. What we get is each AMP element has a bunch of potential events. Much like in JavaScript, we can listen to events. And the way you do so is by adding an on attribute to your element. And in this case, we want to listen to the on submit success element. And so this is about the most JavaScript we actually get to write. And we take on submit success, and then each elements in an AMP page then also have actions you can call on them. Now I'm going to call on the simplest one, which is hide. So when this form submits successfully, we will be rendering this submit success div inside the form. So I don't want to hide the whole form, and that's what I've got this div here for. And we can address elements by their IDs. So answer A inputs, that is going to hide. And you can do more. So if there's more things you want to do when an event happens, you just add a comma, and we're going to get the answer B. I'm going to hide the whole answer B form. You can actually listen to multiple events on a form like this, and to do so, you would just add a semicolon and then do the next event name. So if it was submit error, we could do that, but I'm not going to listen to those. So that's all I need there. And then I also want to do that to answer B's form as well. You can kind of see why I've had to construct two forms for this, but then and then do a little bit of weird stuff here. It's because this is kind of the extent of the JavaScript we can run. It's these kind of, you get an event, and then you can choose an element and run an action on it, or you can update state, which would also do some stuff. This is how I've chosen to do this right now. So one more email to send myself. And hopefully, I'll put a vote for pie in this time, just to keep it even. So there we go. What do you prefer, pie or cake? I'm gonna vote for pie, and this is going to take those buttons away, but render the results inside here. Now pie is up at 16, cake is 24, and we're looking good. So this is the kind of experience that we can build for us. And I'm no designer. We could build a much nicer looking bar chart if we wanted to. But this is the kind of experience we can build inside of an email, and cake is winning. So we'll put the cake picture up inside of an email using this AMP for email. Now let's finish this up now and decide whether this is actually a good idea or not. Well, firstly, there are a couple of further concerns that I haven't covered just yet and are covered inside my application. Or actually, this one is not. Security. We are making post requests to endpoints on my server here on behalf of a user inside an email. If you want to tie that user to a user that's actually inside your system, you probably need some security on this. And the recommended way of dealing with that is to add like an access token, some kind of opaque token that you've generated for your user when you send the email. That then you can validate when they make the request into your application. So right now, I can just keep voting. I can make curl requests from anywhere I want to on this endpoint. But if I added that token, it would keep it secure and with just the user that received the email. Notably, also, if somebody forwards an AMP email, the AMP part does not get forwarded. So somebody getting that forwarded would just get the HTML part. So you don't end up forwarding your access token to other people. Secondly, we're also making AJAX requests inside a web browser. So CORS comes up. AMP email has its own CORS thing that's very well documented. So I recommend you read the documentation. Or if you are building inside Node.js, there is an npm module that handles it for you, which is rather nice. So here's the question: JavaScript for emails, are we sure about it? Well, firstly, it's not exactly JavaScript as we've seen. In fact, I was unable to write any JavaScript, just kind of events and actions. And there is some setting state, which I don't quite cover in this example. But I wanted to make some pros and cons about this to really kind of nail down whether I thought it was a good idea or not. So the pros are that it is a progressive enhancement, and that even if you're sending this to people that can't support AMP email, it doesn't matter. If you're sending it to people that can support AMP email, then they can get a better experience. And I always love that about the web. You always can build for the best potential experience, but give fallbacks for people that can't have that. And then it gives us great user experience. I hope you agree that being able to do this kind of without necessarily opening a new tab and breaking out of the inbox gives people who are going through their emails a great experience. And if you can apply that to whatever your applications, whatever your businesses do, it's definitely going to be a better user experience. And then so it is easier to develop an AMP email. Even if AMP email was just style tags in the head, I would be happy with that. And that would take away the need for all those tables and that terrible layout. Then again, there's the con side of things, right? It's a progressive enhancement, which means not only do we now have to build the HTML version, we have to build the AMP version as well. We don't have to, but if we choose to build an AMP version, we still have to build the old HTML version, and that still has all of its old limits. So there's extra work. There's, of course, the lack of support. If all of your users open things only in kind of iOS Mail app or Outlook on the desktop, then this will be a waste. There's a bit of a learning curve. AMP email only has 18 new elements that you have to learn, but you have to learn what they do and how they do them, and then to work around their quirks. And those quirks are around this idea of being able to those quirks sometimes are heavily involved in that performance thing that AMP websites require. So it's weird to have to do it inside an email, but you have to learn it. There is server-side work to add as well. So if you are making these endpoints to have poll questions answered to, or leave comments on a document like the Google Docs example, you have to write that server-side thing as well. You have to build that token kind of thing, including expiry of the tokens. So there's extra work to be done. And then finally, there is the requirement to get whitelisted by the vendors as well. And if you make a mistake and you get turned down, that could be annoying. So that gets in the way. Ultimately, it comes down to what your goals are. What are your goals with your emails that you're sending your users? Do you want them to be more productive, or are they just informational? If they're just informational emails, then this doesn't really matter to you. But if they are to do with actions that people can take within your application, then what you can do is send them these almost mini applications inside the email and allow them to achieve their goals without breaking stride in their emails. And so that continues to add engagement and user interaction with your application, but without kind of changing the flow of the user inside their inbox. So if your goals are around that kind of thing, I think this could be an amazing opportunity. And then there are a bunch of AMP emails I want to see, right? Like I said, if it's congratulations, you registered, that's not a particularly useful email. But if you have delivery status, so if you're working in online e-commerce, then you can actually get kind of live delivery status inside the email, which is pretty cool. And now I don't think people, are going to keep returning to the one email to check delivery status updates. This is more of the case where the first time the person opens the email, you can update them with what their status is at that point. So if it has moved on from when the email was originally sent, then the reader of the email still gets that up-to-date status. Pretty cool. Product reviews is an amazing one. I know that I myself never review products because I get an email from a company saying, you bought this, how was it? And I could click on this link and then log into your application and then think about writing something, but that's too much effort for me. And I was going through my emails. But if I could leave a star review inside the email and even a comment on it, never having to leave the email, I think that'd be really great. Same for RSVPs. When we're not always doing online events like this, I was going to meetups all the time, and like meetup.com, for example, sends you those RSVP emails. When you click yes, I'm going. And same in like the calendar invite example I showed earlier. Clicking yes and then opening a whole new application just to register that is a frustration to me. Clicking a button that says yes and it reloading inside the email, boom, I'd like to see that. Same for surveys. You can go more than my just poll example with one question. We can add loads of questions. We can go down different branches based on the answers. Listings and sales. This is just to keep things up to date because we, just keeping listings. Like if something is on sale, but then like goes out of stock, your email doesn't have to show the user out of stock things. It can show more in stock things, much nicer. Then finally, I really like the idea of the unsubscribe form, being able to unsubscribe happily from within an email, because I believe that even if a user is unsubscribing, they should get a good experience with that. And if you built in your unsubscribe form into an AMP email, users would love it. So ultimately, I like AMP emails. I think they are a good idea, and they give you that better experience inside your email without opening new browser tabs, because I have enough browser tabs open, and I bet you do too. They're not the same as AMP websites, which I still have a problem with, so that's a good thing. And they are technically open source, and they're open to more mailboxes to implement as well. So if we see, as developers, if mailboxes see us implementing these things and users enjoying them, then the mailboxes can get involved and implement this inside their own inbox themselves. And then just finally, I like to imagine if AMP email was the new HTML email, and if this could push on HTML email itself, allowing us to use styles, use proper layout, and use this interactivity inside regular email. I would love to see that in the future. I've decided I like this as a good idea. So bring on those experimental email experiences. I want to see more of these in my inbox so that I can interact and then and just get on with the rest of my day. I hope you'd like to see this kind of too, but I'd love to know what you think. So please drop me a comment here, or find me online anywhere else. Find me on Twitter and GitHub and LinkedIn as Phil Nash, or drop me an email, philnash@twilio.com. And I would love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching today, and enjoy the rest of DevFest. Thank you.